I never imagined my own daughter's wedding would be the moment I decided to lock her out of my life. We were sitting at the dining room table, the exact spot where I'd served her breakfast before school for years. Harper fidgeted with the rim of her coffee mug, refusing to meet my eyes. Her wedding to Preston was just 3 weeks away. His family had more money than manners. Mom, Preston, and I have been talking. She started, her voice sounding weirdly rehearsed. We think it's best if you don't come to the wedding. I set my mug down on the saucer. The clink of porcelain was the only sound in the room. I didn't yell. I didn't clutch my pearls. I just watched her, waiting for the rest of her excuse. Preston's family is very particular. She went on, gaining confidence since I wasn't bursting into tears. They have certain standards. You're always just so blunt, so small town, and we really don't want any drama. I'm incredibly stressed with the planning, and I need this day to be perfect. It's just better for everyone. She was asking me to step aside on the most important day of her life because my presence embarrassed her. I stared at her hands, the same hands I'd bandaged when she fell off her bike. I had raised a woman who was ashamed of her roots just to fit into a world of pure superficiality. I understand, I said, with a calm that seemed to completely throw her off. Really? She let out a huge sigh of relief, like a weight had been lifted off her chest. I knew you'd get it, Mom. You're the absolute best. She stood up to give me a quick hug, but I took a step back and started clearing the table. I wasn't going to be a shoulder for her to cry on, nor was I going to be her silent martyr. Lock the door on your way out, Harper. I have things to do. I left her standing in the hallway. As I heard the deadbolt click, a cold, crystal-clear decision formed in my mind. If I wasn't good enough to be family for the celebration, I wasn't going to stick around to shoulder her responsibilities either. That same afternoon, I sat down at my laptop. The screen glowed in the quiet living room as I logged into my banking app. Months ago, Harper and I had opened a joint account. I had deposited a hefty sum, 2 years of my retirement savings, plus the money from selling a plot of land my late husband left behind. It was earmarked strictly for the wedding reception and the florist. She had the debit card tied to that account and was planning to make the final vendor payments by the end of the week. Without a second thought, I clicked the transfer option. I moved every single red cent back into my personal secure account, one only I had access to. Then I called the bank and had my name scrubbed from the joint account entirely. The whole thing took 10 minutes. 10 minutes to take back control of my hard-earned money. I didn't sit on the couch and cry. I marched into my bedroom, pulled a suitcase from the closet, and started packing. Breathable clothes, sunscreen, a couple of paperbacks I'd been meaning to read, and my wide-brimmed sun hat. I'd always wanted to see the Florida Keys, to just soak in the Gulf Coast without a care in the world. The next morning, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from Harper. Mom, the florist, tried to run the card for the final balance, and it was declined. Can you check the bank? It has to be a glitch. I read the text while sipping my chamomile tea. There was no glitch. The small-town mom bank had officially closed its doors to Preston's family. I locked my phone screen and zipped up my suitcase. The Uber taking me to the airport was already honking outside. My trip was just beginning, and for the first time in decades, I was only looking out for number one. Key West welcomed me with a warm breeze and the smell of salt air. I checked into a little boutique hotel miles away from the tourist traps. My mornings consisted of walking barefoot in the sand, drinking excellent coffee by the water, and reading under a cabana. The peace was absolute until I finally turned my phone back on the third day. I had 14 missed calls from Harper and several voicemails. I hit play on the first one while watching the waves crash against the shore. Mom, pick up. The caterer is threatening to cancel everything. I went to the bank and they told me the account is empty. What did you do with the money? Her voice had escalated from annoyed to full-blown hysterical. I typed out a brief factual reply. That money was my gift to celebrate with you. Since you made it clear my presence would cause drama and ruin your perfect day, I decided to withdraw my contribution so I wouldn't be in the way. Enjoy your wedding. I locked the screen, not waiting for a reply. I knew the explosion was coming. That night, my oldest son, Connor, called. He was invited to the wedding, and unlike his sister, he had always been grounded and hardworking. "Mom, where are you? I went by the house, and nobody's home," he asked, sounding genuinely worried. "I'm on vacation at the beach, honey. I needed a break." I heard him let out a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. Harper is losing her mind. Preston and his family are furious because the vendors are demanding payment, and they refuse to chip in a single dime. The tension is through the roof. That sounds like a problem for them to figure out, Connor. They're adults. I know, Mom. Just be safe and enjoy the beach. You deserve it. I hung up with a faint smile. The house of cards was starting to collapse, and I was 1,000 miles away drinking coconut water and listening to the ocean. The day of the infamous wedding arrived. I wasn't stuffed into a formal gown or torturing my feet in uncomfortable heels. I was wearing a white linen dress, walking barefoot along the shoreline. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in gorgeous shades of orange and purple. It was a beautiful sight, completely at odds with the chaos unfolding back home. My phone rang. It was Connor. He was breathing heavily, and in the background I could hear a thick murmur of voices punctuated by muffled yelling. "Mom, it's off," he said bluntly. I stopped dead in my tracks, letting the tide wash over my ankles. What happened? A total train wreck. Preston and Harper got into a massive blowout right in the church vestibule. Turns out, Preston tried to con the photographer into working for free in exchange for exposure because they were totally broke. Harper panicked, started screaming at him in front of his mother, and his mom called her trash. I listened closely, but I wasn't surprised. Greed and vanity always crash and burn eventually. Harper had a complete meltdown and smashed a floral arrangement. Preston just turned around and told her he wasn't going to marry someone who humiliated him like that. They left Mom. He and his whole snobby family literally left her at the altar. A heavy silence hung between us. I didn't take joy in her misery, but I didn't feel the urge to swoop in and save her either. "Where is she now?" I finally asked. "Crying in the reception hall. And it gets worse, Mom. The venue owners and planners locked the doors. They're demanding the cancellation balance be paid in full today. Nobody can take anything out until they pony up the cash." Connor paused, his voice dropping an octave. "Harper says she's going to call you. She wants you to pay for the mess." Barely 5 minutes after I hung up with Connor, my screen lit up with Harper's name. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. I didn't want her thinking I was sitting around waiting on her. "Mom?" she sobbed the second the call connected. "It's a nightmare. Preston left me. The wedding is canceled. I'm very sorry to hear that, Harper," I replied, keeping my voice neutral and firm. "I need your help." Her voice cracked, but then immediately hardened back into her usual demanding tone. "The venue and the vendors are hitting me with insane penalty fees. It's over $25,000. You need to wire me the money you took out of the account right now, or they're going to sue me." I sat down in a beach chair, watching 2 seagulls fight over a scrap of bread in the sand. The sheer audacity of her demand was almost laughable. She cuts me out to avoid drama, and now expects me to bankroll the biggest drama of her life. "I'm not doing that, Harper." "What, Mom?" "I'm your daughter. You can't just leave me high and dry. You have that money. It was for the wedding. It was to celebrate a wedding I was uninvited from," I clarified calmly. "The money went back into my savings. You signed the contracts with those vendors to impress Preston's family. It is your responsibility and his to deal with the fallout. I don't have a dime. I quit my job because Preston said he'd support me after we got married. I'm coming to live at your house tonight. I have nowhere else to go. No, Harper. You are not coming to my house. I have keys. Mom, she shrieked, and then the line went dead. I stared at the black screen. I knew it wasn't an empty threat. She was used to treating my house like her personal fallout shelter whenever things went sideways. But this time, the shelter was permanently closed. Harper's threat to barge into my home didn't scare me, but it did make me act fast. I wasn't about to let my house become ground zero for her emotional collapse, much less. Let her rummage through my things, looking for valuables to pawn off for her debts. I scrolled through my contacts and found Frank, a trusted neighbor who ran a small locksmith business a few blocks away. He answered on the second ring. Well, hello, Joanne. Long time no see. What can I do for you? Frank, I need a massive favor. I'm out of town right now, but I urgently need all the locks on my house changed today. The front door, the back patio, and the garage side door. Is everything okay, Joanne? Did someone break in? Something like that, Frank. I just need to make sure nobody gets in without my permission. My son Connor will swing by to pay you and grab the new keys this afternoon. I trust you to make sure it's buttoned up tight. I called Connor and gave him the rundown. He got it instantly. He knew exactly how invasive his sister could be when she was desperate. Less than 3 hours later, Connor texted me a photo, a shiny new set of keys resting on my dining room table. A wave of relief washed over me. I spent my last night in Key West eating at a tiki-lit restaurant, treating myself to garlic butter mahi-mahi. I thought about all the times I had bitten my tongue and shoved my own needs aside to keep the family peace. All that effort had been for absolutely nothing. Real peace isn't negotiated. It's built by setting boundaries. And mine had just been installed with fresh brass and heavy-duty screws. My flight landed right around noon. Connor picked me up at the airport and drove me home. As we turned the corner onto my street, we saw exactly what I had predicted. Harper's car was parked on my curb, the trunk popped open. She was sitting on my porch steps, surrounded by 5 suitcases, her mascara smeared, looking absolutely furious. The second we pulled up, she leaped to her feet. I stepped out of Connor's car, calmly carrying nothing but my purse. Finally, Harper yelled before I could even take 2 steps. I've been out here for hours. I tried to open the door and the key won't turn. What did you do to the lock? I changed them, I said, stopping a few feet away from her. It's my house. Harper and I decide who comes inside. I'm your daughter. I just got dumped at the altar. I'm drowning in debt and you're leaving me out on the street. She waved her arms around, hoping the neighbors were peeking through their blinds. She wanted to put on a show to guilt-trip me. Keep your voice down, I warned, looking her dead in the eye without backing down. I am not leaving you on the street. You made your bed. You kicked your mother out of your wedding because you were embarrassed of me. You blindly trusted a man who didn't respect you, and you signed contracts you couldn't afford. None of that is my fault. Connor, say something to her, she demanded, pivoting to her brother for backup. Connor just crossed his arms and leaned against his car. Mom's right, Harper. We told you Preston was bad news. You're going to have to fix this yourself. She stared at me, eyes bloodshot, waiting for me to cave like I always did. But the wall I had built wasn't coming down. Harper quickly realized that throwing a tantrum wasn't working. She shifted gears, dropping her shoulders and playing the wounded victim. Mom, please. The venue manager said they're going to come after me. I don't have anything in my name except my car. If I don't pay them, they're going to come after you because they know you're my mom. You have to take out a loan or take a second mortgage on the house. You're older now, you don't even need that much money. That was it. That was the absolute confirmation that she didn't feel a shred of genuine remorse, just cold, hard self-interest. She wanted me to risk the roof over my head in my retirement just to save her public image. I walked up to the steps, but I didn't reach for my keys. I stood on the bottom step looking up at her, yet feeling 10 feet tall. Listen to me very carefully, Harper, because I'm only going to say this once. I am not taking out a second mortgage. I am not getting a loan. And for the record, I just signed legal paperwork transferring this property into a trust controlled by me and Connor. You cannot touch this house. Not to live in, not to sell, and sure as hell, not to use as collateral for your mistakes. Her jaw literally dropped. All the color drained from her face. You did what? I protected my future. Since I stopped being your mother the day you cut me from your wedding, I realized my financial obligations to you were over too. If the debt collectors come calling, give them the address to Preston's fancy country club estate. As for me, leave me alone. I turned my back to her, asked Connor to bring my suitcase to the porch, and walked up the steps. I slid the new key into the deadbolt and turned it, listening to the deeply satisfying, metallic click. I walked inside and shut the door behind me. Through the living room window, I watched Harper standing frozen on the porch, finally grasping the reality that her safety net was gone. Connor gave her a wave from the car and drove off, leaving her alone with her luggage. The following days were a parade of desperate attempts. Preston suddenly crawled out of the woodwork and had the nerve to show up at my door, demanding I pay half the cancellation fees to preserve the honor of both families. I didn't even unlock the screen door. I reminded him that he was the one who ran away from the altar and suggested he pawn his designer watch if he was so strapped for cash. He stormed off, muttering curses under his breath, proving that he and Harper truly deserved the mess they made. Then came the texts from distant aunts and cousins. Harper had spun them some wild, distorted story where I was a monster who threw her on the street over a simple misunderstanding. Joanne family needs to stick together during hard times, my sister-in-law texted. I didn't even bother arguing. I've learned that people who judge you without hearing your side of the story aren't worth your time. I went into my phone settings, silenced notifications from the flying monkeys, and archived the chats. I didn't block Harper, but I put her on Do Not Disturb. She could write whole essays of complaints. I would simply ignore them. I cleaned the house, made a pitcher of fresh lemonade, and sat out on the back patio. For the first time all week, there was no yelling, no demands, no drama. Having complete control over my own life was a quiet luxury I refused to ever lose again. 3 months went by. The scandal of the canceled wedding eventually fizzled out, replaced by fresh town gossip. Harper had to sell her car and go back to work. She moved into a rented room downtown. I only know this because Connor mentioned it in passing during one of our Sunday dinners. I didn't press for details. I had made a strict rule for myself. Harper's life was no longer a topic of conversation in my house unless absolutely necessary. One Tuesday afternoon, while I was watering the bougainvilleas on the porch, my phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I pulled it out and saw a short text on the screen. It was from Harper. Mom, things have been really tough. I know you're mad, but I need you. Can we talk? I miss my house. I read the text twice. I noticed her exact choice of words. I miss my house, not I miss you. The manipulation was still there, just dressed up as nostalgia. I slipped the phone back into my pocket without replying. I didn't feel guilty, and I didn't feel that suffocating tightness in my chest anymore. I looked at the bright pink flowers on my porch, felt the late afternoon sun on my face, and took a deep breath. I had spent most of my life bending over backward, cleaning up other people's messes and apologizing for taking up space. But not anymore. I had cut the cord, tying me to my own daughter's toxicity, and as hard as the choice had been, the payoff was priceless. After all, she was the one who kicked me out to avoid drama. I just took her up on the offer permanently. I picked up the hose, smiled, and went back to watering my garden. My life finally was entirely my own. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is learning to lock the door. We're taught that family means putting up with everything that our role is, to be an endless well of support, even if it means fading into the background, or letting ourselves be treated poorly. But the quietest, most powerful lesson here is that peace of mind is non-negotiable. Setting hard boundaries isn't revenge, a temper tantrum, or cruelty. It's simply letting go of control and letting others carry the weight of their own choices. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. In the end, choosing your own peace and walking away from places where you aren't valued doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you someone who finally remembered what they're worth.